Lay.
So I'm very excited to dive in today and talk about animals, which quite frankly is one of my favorite topics. When I was a kid, I was kind of known as like the little neighborhood caretaker for animals.
Hmm.
I seemed to attract pretty much everything that was wounded or hurting, or it was kind of sad as a child because I lost the majority of them. They'd been like hit by a
Yeah.
car or like something was going on. But I had my own little like pet cemetery. But I kind of knew intuitively that it was like, well, at least they got tons of love on their way out.
Exactly. Yep.
And I used to spend my summers at a veterinarian's office working and watching this one particular veterinarian, Dr. Stagnita. He was this short, balding Jewish man, and I was absolutely madly in love with him. Like to the point where I was like jealous of his wife and I wouldn't be nice to her. Mind you, I was like 8,
Oh,
I
that's
was like a
great.
kid, but I loved him so much because he was so compassionate. And I would sometimes sit with him. I remember having this dog come in once who had all these babies, and these babies, I can't remember what was going on, but like I think they were going to have to be put down, or there was something that was happening. And he was crying, and he was on one
Oh,
side of the table and I was on the other side, and I was crying. And of
yeah.
course, the whole time I'm just thinking like, you're the most magical man
Right.
ever.
I love you. You're just amazing.
This is not an attractive human being, but I was like just so in love with his heart. He was just the
But that's the
most,
thing, right? Like you got past that part and just got like even deeper.
it
You learned
will,
to value so many valuable lessons at the age of 8, right? Like,
he loved animals like as much as I did, and he was
yeah.
so tender and so sweet. Um, but animals to me have always, they've always been these perfect beings. In a lot of ways, I prefer animals over humans. Like they're easy, they're simple, they are who they are. And I feel like they have so much to teach us. So I was really excited when I came across, your business online and looked into what it is that you're doing, because I had never heard of holistic animal care at all. I didn't even realize these things were available. And I know a lot of my listeners have pets. And so I'm really just excited to geek out on pets with you, dive into this. And for anyone who is listening, we're also going to be talking about some online courses
Hmm.
and whatnot that Alexia provides. And there's just a number of things here today. So, where I'd really like to start off with you is your relationship to animals and why it is like, why were you drawn to working with animals in the beginning?
Well, I was very similar to you in I grew up in a household where like animals would just come to us, it seems, and we tried to take care of everything and anything. It also didn't hurt that my dad wanted to be a veterinarian, so there was probably like a slight influence there. But like my cousin came over one day and she found, as she was like walking into our house, there was a black-footed ferret on our front lawn. So like things like that would happen that it was like, okay, well, this is ours now. And it was the 80s. So like you just took it in and you took care of it, right? And I always, we had cats growing up, we had dogs, we caught like little garter snakes, and we had like the gamut, mice, like you name it, we had it. And I was that kid who always knew I wanted to be a veterinarian. Like
Mm.
that was it. And for me, it was really this love of, because I would fluctuate like a little bit, right? Like I would fluctuate of, oh, I want to be a psychologist. And then I want to be a nutritionist, or maybe I want to be a human doctor. And then ultimately it came down to, well, I can help people and animals by being a veterinarian. And so that just seemed like the best place for me. And so that's at least how I started my path to vet school.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, I remember as a kid, I mean, I used to chase down snakes. I was obsessed with them. Like, fortunately, I knew around my area which ones were safe to chase.
It's really
But
funny.
but I was just obsessed with them. They were the most interesting little beings to me. I loved like how smooth their skin was.
Mhm.
And I feel like in that point in time, I'm so thankful for that part of my childhood. It was like pre-social media and all of that crap. I mean,
Yeah,
we didn't
yeah.
grow up watching TV. We grew up being outside and chasing wild animals around
Mhm.
and just kind of coming into contact with all kinds of things. Frogs were a big obsession as well for me. So that's pretty incredible that you always kind of knew that you wanted to be a vet. Um, it wasn't
Yeah, it was
intimidating to you at all when you thought about going to school or
no, I was like again, it might have to do with my ADHD, but I was so focused that I was like, "No, obviously I'm going to vet school. Obviously they're gonna accept me for me." And like, I'm so the whole and luckily I was a good student. Um, I did have to study hard through college and then through vet school is like a whole other experience. But like it was just this thing that I was going to vet school. There was no question. And then I remember waiting for my responses after applying, and I had that aha moment of was like, wait a second, there's a possibility they might say no. I can't like I just couldn't even comprehend that as a possibility. So there was a there was a brief period of like 2 months of total panic that I was like, if I don't get in, what am I going to do? I literally had no backup plan. I was just that's what I was going to do. And thank God I got in. So
I think that's honestly, I mean, really, I feel like a beautiful thing when you're that focused in regards to what it is
yeah.
that you want to do and that you don't have like a plan B, right? We hear that I think sometimes with like well-known people, they're like, I didn't have a plan B. Like I know like I've heard J-Lo talk about that before. Like she was just like, nope, this is what I'm doing.
This was it. Yeah.
And I feel like when you're in that space, like there is nothing that can push you off from that. I mean, it's
Hmm.
just, I'm sure that even if you wouldn't have gotten that school, you would have tried another school or whatever the case may be. Like you probably wouldn't have given up. So, what happened in regards to kind of your college experience and then this switch into, and I love that you call it naturopathy,
Thank you. Thank you.
PAW
I
for
love a good
those.
play on words.
Yes, absolutely. Because there is a big difference. And I'm excited to learn because I'm not really familiar with this difference as well. But I'd love to know kind of why you didn't go down the normal path of, being a veterinarian and kind of why you took this path.
So funny story, I did take the conventional path because no matter what, like when you go to vet school, you learn conventional medicine.
For sure.
That's
For
it. If
sure.
you want to treat animals, like that's the way you go. So whole conventional medicine thing started, started up seeing practice. And within about a year and a half, I was burnt out. I was drained. I was burnt out and drained, not just for like the hours, but I was doing everything that I learned in vet school. And I had a great mentor at the time at the hospital. And it was like one of these ginormous hospitals with all different residencies and emergent. So, like, there were a ton of amazing people to learn from. And every week, because I was still a baby vet, we would just kind of go through things. And I was like, why is this case coming back with like chronic ear infections? What am I doing wrong? And she would say to me, you're doing everything right. And I was like, but they're coming back all the time. Right. And so, like, there kept being these cases over and over and over again. And so, as that's happening, and I'm kind of starting to burn out, I went to a conference in California and I was visiting my little sister who was also at university there at the time. And because I had obviously no, like I knew everything because I just came out of vet school. So there was like nothing there for me to learn. And so there was a track on acupuncture. And I grew up going to the chiropractor. We dabbled with homeopathy. I'm Greek, so like Greek mountain tea or oregano tea, chamomile, like that fixes everything in life. And so I was like, acupuncture, let's sit on this because everything else is boring. I know it all, right? So I sat in and literally I didn't want to move. I didn't want to leave. I don't even know if I left for lunch. I was just like, I need to know as much as possible. This is fascinating and amazing. And then I, in talking, in listening to those lectures, he talked about repro, and I had like my own drama with doctors telling me I was never going to get pregnant. And so I went home, I started acupuncture myself. I signed up for the course. And so I started taking the course. Turns out the acupuncture for myself really worked. And then I got pregnant. So I was like, ding, ding, this stuff is amazing. And I love it. And I can't wait to bring this to my patients. And so then that was it. And like once my world was open to acupuncture, you can't help but start to learn about herbs and energy and all sorts of other healing pathways that are out there. And so like my mind was just like blown. I got out of the box. And now it was, oh my God, there's all this other stuff I can do for my patients and myself and my family and my friends and everybody else. Right. And so that was it. And then I just started down my path of herbs, and herbs are really my jam. And I just kept going.
I want to dive in a little bit with this just to kind of clarify and also just understand more. So, acupuncture for pets. I know because I actually almost went to like I like looked into schools. I was like, I want to do this. And then it was like basically I have to kind of become like a bit of a semi-doctor, right? It's like 4 years of school and like all
Yeah.
of these different things.
Yeah.
Did you have to go through like additional like major training for acupuncture for pets, or were you already kind of there because of your veterinarian training?
Yeah. So because I'm a veterinarian, and in like every state varies, but in New Jersey, you have to be a licensed veterinarian in order to do acupuncture. There's some states where you can be a human acupuncturist and take courses for animals and treat animals. Um, so because I was already a veterinarian, I did my, I think it was like 300 hours of courses, and then like 30 hours of seeing practice, and then I was certified.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
So acupuncture for pets, because I kind of, again, I just want to break this down a bit. So let's talk about the benefits of acupuncture, with pets. I'd love to know more. I mean, I'm very familiar with like humans,
Yeah.
and I'm sure it's similar, but
It's
let's just talk like
literally,
I know nothing.
yeah, no, totally. And I hate to simplify it, but like it's literally the same. And I think some human doctors and some veterinarians probably get really mad at me, where I'm like, we're literally all pretty much the same. I mean, we have the same diseases. Okay, like there's slight differences in physiology, but for the most part, we're very, very similar. And so acupuncture helps cats, dogs, horses, lizards, like whatever it is, for the same things that you would treat a human for. So anything from any chronic disease, inflammation. I see a lot of patients for arthritis, honestly, but I also see a lot of patients for chronic diseases. I see a lot of patients for anxiety. I mean,
What kind of
anxiety
diseases?
behavior. So, like chronic kidney disease, liver, thyroid, cardiac. I'm trying to think of who I saw yesterday.
How does the acupuncture help with like a chronic disease?
So it helps by modulating the immune system. We know that acupuncture points are located at areas where there's a high concentration of lymph, nerves, blood vessels. And so you're stimulating the body to release various different hormones. You might be blocking pain pathways. You're sending electrical signals through the fascia as well. So it's about rebalancing the body so the body can work at its optimum. And I think part of it also is it's hard for us from like a Western conventional point of view to remember that the body can heal itself, right? So like it's always this thing of, well, how is it fixing that disease specifically? And it's like, well, we're giving the body the tools it needs to be able to heal so that it can function as best as it can given whatever else is going on. Um, but that's the really like basic way of how acupuncture works. And honestly, like there's different ways you can look at it. You can also look at it from a total traditional Chinese medicine point of view, where we're working with qi, which is the energy, and you're moving energy through the body, you're moving blood, we're getting rid of dampness, stagnation. And then you can look at it from kind of the Western biomedical standpoint, where they're doing things like functional MRIs, putting an acupuncture needle in and seeing different areas of the brain light up. So it's not like a pharmaceutical drug where you take a pill and it acts on one receptor site, let's say. We're finding out from research that acupuncture works in like so many different ways, right? I
Yeah.
mean, we know it's an energetic thing for sure, but like it's working through the fascia, it's working through the nervous system, it's stimulating the immune system. It's great for gut health. Oh my God, it's like so good for gut stuff. So it's something that acupuncture can help with many disease processes, but also I want to say like we should be doing acupuncture just to maintain health and not wait for anybody or anything to be falling apart and then it's like, oh, let's do it now. It's more about it's I also see a lot of patients for maintenance of let's stay healthy, right? Like let's just keep supporting because we deal with a lot of crap out there.
Yeah, the way that I see it, and you'll have to tell me if this resonates. I mean, I know that, like, in working with the human body, of course, so much disease comes from energy, emotions. These kinds of things are really backed up within our systems and backed up within different areas of our body. And so it feels like to me, kind of what you're saying is, same, right? With the animals. And of
Yeah.
course, the acupuncture is just moving that through. So then the body can step in and do its job in that repair.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you're saying, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely. And our energy affects their energy.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So I see.
Oh yes. I have a really a close friend of mine. I know she won't bother, or she won't mind me mentioning her, but she has always really struggled with like massive anxiety, depression, just all kinds of issues. And every cat that she has gotten is the same. And I do a lot of animal readings, not a lot, but a fair amount of animal readings in the Akashic Records. And I'm always seeing constantly how they're just taking in their owner's energy. Cats in
Mm-hmm.
particular are really protectors for their owners. Dogs take in that energy, but in a different way, but cats really absorb. I mean, they're like, when you think back to Egyptian times, that was part of the reason they were so
Yeah.
prolific, was that ability to protect.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's fascinating to think about.
It is. It is. And for me, it's nice because then well, it's nice and it's not nice. It gives me the opportunity to kind of talk to people of like, hey, you need to make sure you're taking care of yourself
Yeah.
because, whether they want to recognize the energetic thing, whatever. But it's like, I know that there's the energetic piece there, but also for them, even if they're not consciously doing it, if they're going to take care of themselves better, then their animals are going to be better just from that.
Yeah. No, it's a huge part of that. I'm so glad that we brought this up too, because I think most people don't realize, like this is just not something that you would think of necessarily unless you really understand the energy dynamics. And
Mm-hmm.
also just in regards to the roles that animals play for people. How receptive are people to hearing that kind of information from you?
And I always have to preface it with, I'm not saying this to make you feel guilty, right? Like your dog's anxiety might be because of you. Please don't feel guilty. But like maybe it's a little sign that you should be doing a little bit more to help yourself so that you can help your pet. I mean, the other thing is you could talk to so many vets that I have animals coming in, they have thyroid issues. And the owner's like, I have thyroid issues. There's kidney issues. The owner has kidney issues. Like all sorts of interesting patterns start to pop up. So you can explain it from a few different ways, but conventionally, no one's going to believe you. But it is interesting how, our energies really make a an impact on
Yeah.
them.
Yeah. That's huge. It's huge. I've done some reading. I don't know if you've ever like looked into this before. Like about Atlantean times and animals and just like the roles that they played in families and how Atlantean families would always receive like a dog when a child was born because the dog was literally meant to be there through, the development of
Hmm.
that child. It would help them to stay in their heart center. It would help like just a number of different things.
Yeah.
But it's so fascinating to me. I think that's one of the reasons, just kind of intuitively, that I've always loved animals and felt like it was so important for young kids to have animals in their life,
Yeah.
in that regard.
Oh yeah.
So let's dive in a little bit to like herbs and these kinds of things, because to me, this was just like, what? Like herbs and pets? Like, okay, I want to know more. I'm so curious. Um, and again, I guess maybe just going back to the fact that it's like bodies are bodies, right? But like,
Yeah.
so herbs, talk to me about herbs and pets. I'm so curious.
I mean, obviously I love my herbs. It's again, it's one of these things where it was recognizing that there's all different forms of medicine out there and there's not one right pathway. And so it's not, conventional medicine is great at what it does. But then there's a lot of shortcomings and there's a lot that we still don't know. And when you run out of answers, that was my other problem initially, where it was like, let's say I had a cat with chronic kidney disease and people are like, well, what can I do? And I'm like, this is it. This is all we have. And so by using herbs, I'm able to further treat, help support my patients with these amazing, amazing plant allies that we have. So I'll use herbs in conjunction with conventional medicine. I'll use herbs alone. I'll use them in a preventative way. I'll use them um, to treat, right? Like, so again, things like chronic kidney disease, where we don't have a ton of conventional options, herbs are a beautiful thing to add in. Keeping puppies healthy and dogs healthy, as especially like if they're being boarded, let's get some herbs on board and really support them. Anti-inflammatory, I mean, so many herbs are anti-inflammatory, but like inflammation tends to be the root of all evil sometimes. And so there's so many herbs that we can use to help support our patients, get some good healing, help them to feel better and have a good quality of life. So I really I really love the ability to do that for them.
And are herbs like, when is this kind of like the Chinese medicine part of acupuncture? Is that
It
similar?
is. So for me, yes. So for me, I use Chinese herbs, I use Western herbs, Ayurvedic, Greek, like you name it. I use most of the different various schools that are out there. So yes, I do the full gamut.
That's so cool. That's so cool. I mean, like, I guess I wouldn't have thought like animals eating herbs.
Yeah. I
I feel
mean,
like
if you
so
think
much of
about,
like food, which I want to get
yeah.
into with you in a minute, but like when I think about animals and food, like I guess I'm always thinking about meat. And so like herbs
Hmm.
is just not even like something that kind of comes to mind. It's
Yeah,
pretty wild to think about.
it is. But I mean, it's interesting once I started to take the dive into herbs and then starting to look at, because it is that thing of like really animals and herbs, but we all evolved with plants together, right? So like
Yes.
there's that part of things. Also, there's this really cool thing called zoopharmacognosy where we should be able to, but animals are very great at seeking out plants that they know their bodies need.
Mm.
And so there's so many studies that are being done now, but it's like it's just being in tune with your body and listening to your body. So if my dog is going out and I don't know, well, she enjoys the figs off my fig tree, but like if she's going out and chewing on something, as long as it's I don't know, nothing crazy. I'm like, you need it, so have at it. I don't spray pesticides or anything, but
That was going
you
to be
know,
my question. It's like, because I mean, everybody knows about like, oh, when your dogs and cats are like going out and like chewing on grains and they're like having digestive issues or whatever the case may be. So that's just
and
them kind of intuitively knowing, like, I need
it's
this.
yeah, usually it's them intuitively knowing. So there's a fun thing with different grasses out there. Like it might just be fun. They literally might just enjoy it.
Okay.
It might be that they need the chlorophyll in there because chlorophyll is very similar to a heme molecule in us, except there's magnesium and the heme has iron. But there's something about blood building that also, so maybe they need a little blood building. There's also some really good bacteria on there, which, like, who knew? And so maybe they're looking to repopulate their microbiome. And sometimes legit they are just trying to vomit. They're like, I feel nauseous and sick. And so this is going to make me vomit. And
Hmm.
again, they're listening to their bodies and what they need. So there's a few different reasons as to why they might be munching on grass or something else.
I love that. That's so cool. So are there a couple of herbs, or maybe you can like name like one or two that might be good for folks to kind of like almost like a multivitamin type of scenario that might be good for post pets just in general? Or is it more so just kind of to treat or
Oh
prevent
no, I
or
mean, it's this thing of there's so many herbs, and that's also why I really love what I do because I can individualize my plan for every patient. So I can have two patients come in with the exact same problem, but depending on their constitutions and their background and their environment and their stress levels, I might come up with two totally different treatment protocols for them
okay.
because I'm able to tailor it to them specifically, right? But for like all of us and dogs and cats in general, if you think about, I don't know, I always think about things like, let's say, like milk thistle, where milk thistle's just great for the liver, just really supporting it. I don't like to use the word detoxify because unfortunately, I think that's gotten like, it can be taken in too extreme of a way, and we're literally just supporting the organ, right? But because we're exposed to 84,000 chemicals in the air every day, gentle liver support is a beautiful thing.
Hmm.
Calendula is like one of my favorite herbs on earth. She really speaks to me. And calendula is, again, it's like great at healing things. So whether it's healing the skin, healing your gut mucosa, calendula is just a really great one that I use a lot. And like lemon balm, I have lemon balm running rampant in my yard. And lemon balm is calming. It's great for the gut. It's antiviral. So like there's this thing where even if you don't have a problem per se, if you're just using herbs to support your system, I think it's always a win-win situation. I mean, sometimes I go along and I'm like, I'll have a little of this and a little of that. And how am I feeling today? And just it's like, what do we need today? That'll be great.
Hmm. That's so cool. I feel like that. I feel like we could probably, I mean, talk just about herbs
Oh, for
for
sure.
a while.
Hours, hours and hours.
So I want to get into food. And
Mhm.
you talk about food therapy specifically on your website, but like I know that when I had my last dog, um, who passed away actually this past year, he was living
Oh,
with my
I'm
best friend
sorry.
because I had moved out of the country for a while.
Mm.
But he was such a baby, but like he, I feel like food is such a big topic with pet owners because there's so much crap out there. And when I
Mhm.
had my dogs, it was just like finding food that I felt like my dog liked, but that was also good. That like it was so complicated. I'd love to get your take on that. Any advice, that you have for folks. And then I want to know about food therapy once we kind of get there. And there's a puppy in the background.
I know. That's why I had to get up before because she was scratching at the door. She was like, "Let me out." I was like, "I'm just going to leave it open." So food is a $1 billion industry,
Yeah.
right? And so there's a lot of money behind food. When I went to vet school, our nutrition courses were funded by one of these big companies, and they come in and they give you backpacks, and like your nutrition book literally has their company logo on it. And we are taught, like every vet, and so that's why when people are like, my vet told me, it's because that's what we learn. This is what we learn in school, that here's your complete diet, it's in a bag or it's in a can, and this is what is healthiest, and that's what you do. And then it's either, I find a lot of the time it's either like, if as a vet or as a person you've gone through a health crisis and you're like, wait a second, if I'm not supposed to eat processed food, why am I feeding it to my dog, my cat, whatever it may be? And so I always tell my clients, if you eating processed food, you know that's not good for you. Why is feeding your pet processed food good for them? Because it's balanced. And I'm going to like use air quotes balanced, because you could spray a multivitamin onto anything and make it balanced. You could spray it onto cardboard and make it balanced, right? So it's goes way back to food is medicine. And I think it's like this basic foundation that we're missing probably as a society, but also in veterinary medicine, of let's feed a great, nutritious, bioavailable, fresh food diet. And it can be cooked, it can be raw. I don't subscribe to like one thing being better than the other. Again, it depends on the patient. So if I have a patient who I think fresh cooked is better, that's what I'm going to recommend. If I think fresh raw is better, that's what I'm going to recommend. But fresh food is really, it's literally like the building blocks of health for sure. And because if you're just feeding high processed pro-inflammatory food all the time, you're on the hamster wheel constantly chasing the inflammation, and you're never going to get things to stop.
So when you say processed food, I'd love to just break this down. So when you say
Yeah,
processed food versus whole food, can you give me some examples? Because I'm thinking like processed food would be like store-bought food. And then
exactly.
whole foods
So
is more like what would you feed like a dog versus a cat? Like what are some of those differences there?
so the process that I'm talking about, it's this high heat process that kibble's cooked at like, I can't tell you the exact temperature, but it's a very high heat. Let's just stick with that. And so we know something called the Maillard reaction happens. It's the same thing that happens when meat is grilled and you get those like grill lines, and they say how carcinogenic that is because of the high heat processing, because it does something to the proteins basically that makes it more pro-inflammatory. So any kind of kibble, dry food that I'm talking about, like that's going to be high heat processed. And so you can put the best ingredients in there possible. But once you essentially burn it, you've turned it into something that is not good for the body anymore. And canned food is the same. Canned food is a processed food. And so you're again switching kind of the proteins around a little bit in slight different ways that makes it more pro-inflammatory. And then we can get into like, there's this gray zone of freeze dried food where it's not like super, it's not high heat processed, right? It's like freeze dried. So there's like a little processing that happens. And I don't think freeze dried is the worst thing in the world. And then so then when I'm talking about fresh, I'm talking about either fresh cooked. So like, let's say, and it doesn't have to be you making it at home. There's many companies doing this out there now that you can buy the food from. But it's essentially like you go to the supermarket and you buy some beef, you buy some potatoes, you buy some veggies, and then it's balanced, right? Like we always do want it to be a balanced diet, but then they're cooked. And again, assuming it's not being cooked and burnt, it's a much less processed diet. And then raw is, I mean, raw is raw.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, I know that. I mean, gosh, my fascination has always been, I mean, I see a lot of folks doing like some some cooked at home and then also some processed. I know one of the things I'm this is a random kind of curiosity. I feel like maybe some of the listeners might be curious about this as well, but like I know like with teeth, one of the things that it's like I feel like comes up a lot is like older animals end up having to get their teeth removed, and that like soft food is not good for them because it just doesn't, it help, like they're not using their teeth. So what is kind of the, is that a myth? Is that like, I'm curious what your
So
thoughts
sorry,
are on that.
I'm giggling because this is something that like you can get so many different opinions on, and it depends on who you talk to. But the best was I was at a conference and a veterinary dentist was speaking, so like a boarded dentist, and he was like, "If you ate crackers all day, what are your teeth going to be like? Are the crackers really like crunching that tartar off of your teeth? No, it's just getting more embedded in there, right?" And so we've all been taught that somehow magically kibble gets the tartar off, but I don't. It doesn't, and it's not keeping. There's so much more involved in a healthy mouth, which I think also we ignore in humans. But it's not just cracking the tartar off. Like there's a whole microbiome in there, and it's just eating hard things. Yes, like chewing on bones, but like that's a different chewing action that can help. But I cannot subscribe to the school of thought that kibble actually will crack tartar off of teeth and keep teeth clean. After I heard the cracker analysis, I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense. It's been actually a big topic of conversation this week with clients about brushing their animals' teeth. And some people, like, they're trying so hard and they're doing amazing because like I wouldn't, I mean, I love my dog, but like I can barely get my kids to brush their teeth twice a day, right? So people get very upset when they're like, I've been brushing my dog's teeth once a day and they still need a dental. Well, we still need to go to the dentist twice a year.
Yeah.
And you can brush and floss and water pick, and they're still going to clean stuff off of your teeth,
Yeah.
right? So, same thing with dogs. It's just that we do, to do a really good cleaning, you do need anesthesia because you can't tell them to sit still and open their mouths.
Yeah. Now, is there like, can all vets work on teeth, or are there like specialized like dentists
Technically,
for?
yes. No. So that is the beauty and the curse of veterinary medicine, is that we are taught to do everything. So every vet is trained to do it, but it's just, do they feel like once you get in it, it's this question of, okay, do I like to do it? Great. How skilled at it am I? Great. And then how complicated is this case? And if this case is a little bit more complicated, it's way better to refer it out to an actual veterinary dentist who that's all they do all day long. And so sometimes it's better to just send to them if there's extractions, root canals, caps, like there's a lot of things happening. That's their wheelhouse, not mine.
Yeah, yeah. So I guess the way that I'm seeing it here, and this might be obvious, but I just want to make sure I'm understanding, is like really the big difference. It feels like Eastern Western medicine again to me, like so much in the West. I mean, it serves a purpose, but we're always kind of just treating what is. It's just like maintenance versus Eastern medicine, Ayurvedic, whatever, Chinese, like it's interested in the root, what's going on in the root, and how
Exactly.
can we actually get to the root so that we can make things better from that place. And so that's like the work that you're doing with this, correct? With animals.
Yes. Yeah. And so it's getting to the root. Obviously, I want to provide symptom relief as well. If I have a super itchy dog coming in, I don't want to be like, so it's going to take 3 months to get to the root. So you're going to be super itchy until then, right? Like that's not fair either. So it's using it, sometimes you have to treat the symptoms as much as we try to get to the root, right? Like get to the underlying. It's that like peeling the onion layers back. And so sometimes you have to do it whatever way you can do it.
Well, I think the perfect combination is a mix of both,
Yeah,
especially on those like more
absolutely.
extreme cases, like you're talking about like extra etchy skin or things. I mean, everything
Hmm.
serves its purpose. It's not one or the other.
No,
But Eastern
exactly.
medicine does such a better job at like, oh, let's actually get rid of this issue. Let's like
Hmm.
truly cure it versus let's just put you on medication for the rest of your life.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
So you're
Yeah.
writing right now, like you're doing some research on ADHD in dogs,
Yes.
which
Who
is
knew?
again,
I
like
mean,
I'm like,
Hindsight.
okay. I mean, I'm ADHD. You said you're ADHD. Like, all right, let's talk about ADHD and dogs. Is this like a gobbler mate thing? So it's like these poor pets have been traumatized. Like, I'm so curious.
No, so it's very interesting. It's
Energy
again in the more like
transference, like
it's. I mean, there's obviously like look at my poor dog. Come on, um, as she runs like from either side of the house. No, so part of the school of thought. So it turns out. Sorry, part of it turns out is that like dogs have been used as the model for ADHD. Come here, sorry. As the model for ADHD since the 80s. Like, who knew this stuff, right?
what do you mean the model for
As the
ADHD?
so as like a model to study ADHD and test certain medications on, because they exhibit the same. I hate to use the word symptoms. They exhibit the same behaviors that humans with ADHD do. And
So
so not all dogs, but there's certain dogs that will have ADHD behaviors. Other countries call it ADHD like behaviors, but yes, they're very, very similar to us.
so you're saying that some of the early like research that was done on ADHD was actually done on dogs, like not even humans
So,
so
no, it was
much.
done on humans, but then we've been using dogs as the model for
Interesting.
ADHD. Yes, it's fascinating.
How, okay, please, yeah, tell me more
I
because I'm
know.
just like, what?
I know. So, like, this whole time when people are coming in with their dogs, being like, my dog's crazy. And it's interesting as you start to see more behavior cases, you're like, this is ADHD. Your dog is presenting as autistic. Like, but I'm like, no, 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 we didn't learn about this in vet school. So, no. It, yes, they are. Like, they are ADHD, and diagnosing them is like diagnosing us, where it can be very difficult to do so sometimes because you have this criteria to meet. Um, and so it's an evolving science, right? But there are there's different questionnaires now that have been developed to be able to diagnose a dog's neurodiversity, just like for us.
What are some of the symptoms? I'm assuming like hyperactivity would obviously probably be one.
Yeah, I mean, hyperactivity, anxiety, OCD, aggression, fear, um, inability to settle, inability to focus. It's
Hmm.
the gamut. Yeah. So, like,
Hmm.
when people come in and they're like, my dog has anxiety, now it's like, wait a second. Is it just anxiety? Is it just a situational thing? Or truly, is there an underlying neurodiversity that we have to work with? Because that's what it is now. It's working with them so that we can help settle them down, because I don't want anybody to live in a highly anxious world like that.
So again, kind of going back to like, I'm curious if in the research, like, are these dogs showing ADHD from like beginning signs of like when they're little baby puppies? Or is it maybe the environment that they grew up in, their
These are
owners?
all great questions. And so, like, this is, again, evolving more and more now. So, like, there was a Finnish study done back, I forget when, sometime in the 2000s, and they looked at like 13,000 dogs. So they weren't tracking them from puppyhood time. They were asking owners about them, like
Okay,
present day.
interesting.
So I'm sure there will be studies. Again, it's just hard because you have to like find the populations, you have to get the questionnaires out, someone's got to fund your research.
Yeah.
But I'm sure we will start to learn more. But that's also where it's so important to start to look at it in that way for them, because then in theory it can be transcribed over for us and vice versa, right? So, like, looking at research in kids, is it applicable to dogs, and how can we learn from each other the science from both sides, so that maybe, like, either a whatever medications, herbs, whatever it might be for, let's say, humans with ADHD, we can then take that and use it to treat dogs with ADHD and vice versa. And I think also, I mean, the other thing that really kind of drove me into this is, and like society's better with it now, but like the stigma behind any kind of neurodiversity where it's there. But I think if people are able to see it in their dogs, they accept things a lot better if it's in their dog, right? Like no one's going to sit there and criticize their dog for being ADHD or a little spastic and, you know, just a little crazed and anxious, but they'll do it to people, right? Like, so I think if also we can destigmatize it for our animals, it will help us to destigmatize it for humans as well.
It's such a fascinating topic to consider. I know that the Akashic readings that I've done for they've primarily been mostly for dogs, and a lot of the things going on, you know, would be potentially like could be classed under ADHD type things, like inability, like to like, you know, like just not responding to discipline, like not being able to be trained, like lashing out at other dogs, like regardless of the training that they've been through, or you know what I mean? Like it's
Mm-hmm.
like
Mm-hmm.
these owners have really tried to do everything to kind of, you know, work with this pet, and it just hasn't happened. And I know that like when opening up their Akashic records and being in that space, it's so much about trauma and or kind of their background and where they've come from and like
Mm-hmm.
what they've
Mm-hmm.
experienced before. um you know, of course a lot of these dogs were like adopted, and you know what I mean, so it's not like
Yeah.
you've had them since birth type scenario. So I'd be interested to see like what
Yeah.
actually comes of that, you know.
It's the whole thing's fascinating, but like to your point of trauma, right? Like, because we know trauma is involved in everything for everybody. But think about these dogs, like you said, like they've been shipped from wherever, they were in whatever rescue organization. Who knows where their parents came from? Who knows where their grandparents came from? What was the nutrition like for them? What was their stress level? And then you get into epigenetics, where it's like you have these populations of animals that are, we're having multiple generations in a way shorter period of time than we're able to see for humans. So if trauma is creating an epigenetic change, so like a change through the generation essentially, right? Like mom is traumatized, her DNA changes, her microbiome changes. She has a puppy, now the puppy has that going for them. And so it's not just the mom. What did the mom's mom? What was the mom's mom? You know what I mean? Like you
Yeah.
can go back and in 20 years, you can have, I don't know, at least 20 generations if they were breeding every year, right? And like then it's trauma on top of trauma on top of trauma on top of whatever chemical toxic change may have happened as well. And you're getting all these shifts. And is that also why we're seeing kind of an uptick in behavior issues?
It's fascinating. So
It
I
is.
guess the big question here is cost. Is it a lot more expensive to see a veterinarian like you, or
No,
like,
I mean, it's it's not. Um, my exam fees are actually a lot lower than most GPs. But if you come to see me for, let's say, an initial consultation, because I need to get to know your pet, I need to get to know you, I need to get to know your pet, I need to know their history. We need to go through things. So it's like you going to see a naturopath for the first time. It's not a 10-minute appointment, it's not a 20-minute appointment. I need an hour to sit down and talk to
at
you
least?
and then examine the patient, right? Exactly. And
Yeah.
usually an hour is not enough time.
Yeah.
And you do the best you can. And then I go over and then I get yelled at by my practice manager. And but it's more, like, it seems more expensive, but it's like going to any doctor where if you're going to sit down for an hour, you're going to pay more, right? Because I can't see 3, 4 patients in that hour like I normally would.
Yeah.
Um, but then ultimately, like, my herbs don't cost as much as many conventional medicines, not all. And you are going to pay more for food. I mean, you're not buying it from me, but you're going to pay more for food.
For sure. For sure. If you're feeding whole, I mean, it's similar to to people, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You can get a
And I always tell
microwavable
people,
dinner for a couple bucks, but you
that's
know,
the thing. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, how good is that? And so that's what I tell people. You're going to spend more money, but you're not going to spend it on me. Like, come see me once, twice a year for a maintenance, or I really like the change of seasons, quite honestly. Um, but then food is medicine. And so if you are spending a little bit more on food, it's going to go a long way.
I love that. I love that. So on your website, folks can purchase herbs.
Mhm.
Would you recommend that they like contact you first, that they like are prescribed these herbs, or they like, you know, before they just kind of start grabbing them and buying them for their pets? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
So there's a variety of things, right? Like, so if there's anything that you can buy on there alone, typically it's going to be a pretty gentle formulation. You just follow the directions based on weight, and you can use it generically, right? And then if it's not working and you need something more tailored and specific for your pet, then that's when contacting me, make an appointment. I do telemedicine, come in the office, hang out, chat. Um, so there's different ways to do it, right? Like it's like us going to the health food store and buying, I don't know, an herbal formula for like cold and flu season. And hopefully that works as a preventative. If it doesn't, then go see your naturopath or go get acupuncture. I would do all those things anyway, but
Yeah. What are your thoughts on like CBD? You know, this
I
big
love it.
CBD craze for pets.
I love it. It's interesting as veterinarians, we are still, it's very, I mean, obviously the whole FDA and it's a state thing, but then still at the federal level, it's like a whole different class still. Um, CBD can really, sometimes it can be that panacea where, like yesterday, I had a dog who came in with arthritis and anxiety and some GI issues. And I was like, I hate to make it seem like this is the miracle thing, but like this could be the thing that helps. Um, Otherwise, we move on, we add other things in, but CBD is amazing. And it's not just CBD, right? There's CBG, there's all the different, there's the gamut of cannabinoids. And so that's also where research really needs to come in to what cannabinoids are we using for what situations and what cases.
Love that. Yeah, I mean, I've had a lot of friends use CBD really successfully with their pets, you know, like anxiety, especially like I
Mm-hmm.
have some friends that like get their pets like CBD like treats on like firework nights and stuff like that, you know, just to
Yeah.
kind of help
Yeah.
calm them down in those
Yeah.
situations, or like um separation anxiety, those kinds of things with pets. Um Awesome. So, and another
Yeah.
thing that you have on your site, which I think is fantastic, are these courses for folks, you know, that they can kind of take from anywhere, which I think is fantastic. I really liked the one on grief, you know, for your pets, but I'd love for you to kind of share with us about these courses, you know, kind of maybe why you created them, you know, who they would be good for, just whatever you'd like to share. There's what, I think there's like 5 or 6, I
Yeah,
believe.
there's something like that.
Yeah.
I'm glad you like the grief one because it was like my way of working through my own grief.
I
Um,
saw I on, sorry not to interrupt you, but I just
no.
when I saw that one, because I know that animals grieve so intensely, not only when their owners pass away, but when they lose, you know, like
Hmm.
siblings. And I
Hmm.
had seen really recently, I shared it on Instagram, but it was this video of this owner who had got a dog had passed away, and she got this painting done of this dog. And her, you know, the other dog that was in the house, the sibling of this pet, like saw this painting, and it was just this like, I mean, it totally brought you to tears because this dog's just like, oh my gosh, like, you
Yeah,
know,
you're
like so and
here.
so's here. And he's like
Yeah.
jumping up on the couch and like trying to get into it. And it's just like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
you know?
No, it's heartbreaking.
And I
Yeah.
think that like this
Yeah.
is not a topic that's recognized
We
enough.
don't, no, we don't, well, we don't talk about grief in society in general. Like that's also the rabbit hole I went down with all of this. Um, but like I created it for the humans as well as the animals, because I got to a period in my career where I couldn't even do euthanasias anymore, because I was just like taking it all on, and
Yeah.
I didn't know how to do it properly, right?
Yeah.
And then my dog passed away, and I was like, how do we deal with grief in society in general? And then you have a pet pass away, and then you have some people who totally understand what you're going through, and then other people who will say, but it was just a dog. And you're
They
like,
don't
no,
know.
no, you have no clue. And so that's part of where, like, again, I took this deep dive of the human animal bond, how important that is, because it's, I mean, my grandmother and my dog passed away on the same day
Oh, wow.
17 years ago.
Mm,
And it was this thing of like, she was 90. She was an amazing person. She lived an amazing life. And my dog was 2.5. And I kind
mm,
of swear she took him, so we didn't mourn her as much at the time. But like, it was a different, it was a different grieving process. It was a different sadness. You love your animal in a different way than you love a human.
yeah.
It's a different relationship. I'm not
Yeah.
saying it's better. I'm not saying it's worse. It's a different relationship. And so I think people need like a little bit of space and grace to recognize their grief and like process it, and don't shove that deep down inside somewhere, because we need to we need to be able to move through it. um and that's why I did that.
Yeah. No, I think that, I mean, like, the thing is that pets are able to be with us, at least in my perspective, pets are able to be with us in a way that humans cannot be.
Yeah,
You know, they're
absolutely.
so close. And if you've had a pet for a long period of time, like a pet you've grown up with, like
Hmm.
it's, I mean, it's almost like losing a limb in a way, because
Yeah,
you're so used to them being with you and being a part
yeah.
of, your everyday, the most simplest of stuff. Again, things that
Hmm.
like other humans really can't be with you in,
Yeah.
it's such a unique and really beautiful relationship.
Hmm. It is, and we're very, very blessed to have them.
Yes, extremely blessed. That's why, I mean, like, again, I think for me, you know, I think I love animals just a little bit more, because like they're just like
I would say my dog doesn't talk back to me, and if she does, it's
exactly.
really funny.
They love you no matter what. They love you when you're in a bad mood. They love you, when you're in great mood. Like
Exactly.
they're
She's
so
the
good at
first
like
and only
shifting your
one.
energy too.
Totally, totally. Who's greeting you at the door when you come home? I
Oh,
mean,
I
yeah.
know. I know. Can't, I mean, for years and years with my last dog, Monty, I would get so used to, it doesn't matter how long, how often, and how used to, them greeting you are, it still like lights you up
Still
every
so good.
time.
So good. Like, thank you for loving me.
Yes, yes. Well, Alexia, I have so enjoyed talking with you. I'm really excited because I feel like we touched on so many different topics. And I know that for the listeners, I think that they're just going to see like a whole different world that's available to them out there, with pets. Again, for me, this was just so exciting to come across. Um, so how can, like, I mean, how can folks, connect with you? Do you have any advice for people, who want to start finding more of a naturopathic type of veterinarian? Just, yeah. What's your recommendations?
So if you want to find me, our website is www.naturopathicvet.com, because again, I love a good plan, the naturopath, but with animals. And we're on Instagram, naturopathic, I think it's underscore vet, and the Facebook. I have the naturopathic courses as well for anybody who wants to do like a little self-study without it being from Dr. Google, from an actual doctor who studied and knows these things. And then if you're looking for a holistic vet in your area, Then there's the American Holistic Veterinary Medical Association. So it's ahvma.org. You can go on there, put your zip code in, and find a vet near you. There's the American College of Veterinary Botanical Medicine, so ACBBM, gotta think in my head, .org, that you can find a veterinarian who's also an herbalist. There's tcvm.com, where you can go on to find a veterinarian who's certified in acupuncture. So those are some good places to be. And then, telemedicine is also a great thing that we can do. It has its benefits, it has its limitations, but sometimes just being able to get onto a Zoom call or a phone call is another just great way to get information, get a second opinion, get a fifth opinion, whatever it may be.
Great. So you also offer like Zoom
Yes.
consultations as well?
Yeah. Because as much as I'm really working to get more vets doing what I do, there's not as many of us still. There's more, which thank goodness, super grateful. So it's like slowly coming. Vet schools, there's more clubs. There's only like 2 or 3 vet schools which actually have an integrative program, but it's something. And so it's just getting more vets interested in seeing the options. And in their defense, they're overworked and overwhelmed. And a lot of them are like, I don't have the brain space to do that.
Yeah.
But for those who do, then hopefully they'll learn and just integrate it into practice. It's a great thing.
That's just so cool. I just think it's so cool. I mean, I wanted to be a vet for the longest time, and science is just not my jam. Like I really struggled in school.
I get it. I
think it was just like the amount of school that I was going to have to do. It was like, no.
It's a lot. It's a lot. And then like you just keep going. And then I think I'm just
well,
a
I mean,
lifelong student.
honestly, I feel like if these kinds of things had also been available at like a younger age, because I feel like even my summer spent, working in the vet's office, I saw particular limitations, and I think this would just be such a interesting way to really work with it. So, Alexia, I just want to thank you so much for your time and just, everything that you shared today, your background, and for doing this work. I'm sure all of the animals who get to come see you are so blessed.
Thank you so much for having me. This was super great. I loved it. Thank you.
Absolutely.
It was so good talking with you.
All right, folks, thank you so much for being here with us today and sharing your time. I would love to hear like what really popped up for you in this episode, what you're walking away with. Please share it with someone who can also benefit from it. Leave us a review on iTunes or Spotify and help us to grow this podcast. Be sure to join the email list for resources, podcast updates, and a number of other things. Sending you so much love. And don't forget, when we invest in ourselves, the world benefits. Until next time.